very funky.
Yeah, there's that. Oh, yeah.
Wow. Cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. Luther, that sounded so good.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you.
What was who's are the band members, please?
I don't remember. The guys look so familiar. No, that's I'm so proud of those guys, and sometimes I forget just how good they they play. They're wonderful guys, and I like to think we have a wonderful psychic connection or something. Uh,
Yeah.
Saxophone's the gentleman who wrote that tune, which he calls "No Mercy," is Glenn Cashman, and wrote. Obviously, Glenn was inspired from Cannonball's "Mercy, Mercy,
Yeah.
Mercy,"
Yeah. Very inspired.
but he's got a good sense of humor. So that's Glenn Cashman. Um, and Glenn, by the way, is a director of jazz studies at Colgate University back in Hamilton, New York, an Ivy League school back there. Alto saxophone, marvelous Bruce Babad. Bruce is, by the way, is also at Fullerton Community College in Fullerton, California.
Yeah.
On piano, a guy who's just never ceases to amaze me. His sense of groove is, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that can groove.
Yeah.
Put things the time in the pocket more than Ed Zach.
Ed Zach. Yeah. I thought that was Ed, but he looked different. I haven't seen him for a long time.
And on drums, the gentleman who I guess is an old friend, and I guess I could call him Ray Charles's alter ego. And Cathy, you know what I'm talking about when I say that. It's
Yeah.
Paul Kreibich. Reason I say that is Paul worked for Ray Charles for a number of years, and whenever he can, he'll put on his sunglasses and do his Ray Charles impersonation. So that's the band, and yeah, like I say, I could not be more proud of those guys. They're wonderful, wonderful people, and just such great musicians.
Yeah.
I think that was from a concert that we did. It might have been at Saddleback College down in Mission Viejo. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, you probably know this already, but I'll just say this is Luther Hughes. Luther and I have known each other for many years. He's a wonderful bass player, teacher. And we're going to find out what more he is today. And by the way, Dale Boatman says hello.
All right.
And Jennifer Wheeler, she's your fan.
All right. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
By the way, I forgot to mention giving the guys teaching, educational experiences. Paul and I both teach at Cal State Fullerton. I'm also at Saddleback College. And Ed Zach, I think his last assignment here has been at the Musicians Institute. He's done teaching at a number of the colleges around LA.
Yeah. Yeah. I am fortunate enough to sit in on an online class that Luther teaches, and he has Paul on there and a group of great, what do I say? I don't want to say old because we're not really old, but it's like from the from the former time of the great jazz stuff here in LA and whatnot. Anyway, I'm fortunate enough to sit in on the class every Thursday. So it's fun. It's educational. It's acknowledging. I love to sit in. I'm so happy that you allow me to do that.
We love having you with us, Kath.
It's nice to have at least one singer.
Well, it's in my contract. You must have one. Speaking of singers, and we're going to be featuring Cathy on our next session on Thursday, where we're talking about songs, the verses from songs.
Which I was going over that thing I sent you, the booklet of verses.
Yes.
And some of them are really, there's one that's, I don't know if I can learn it in a week. It's and I forget what song it was for. But it was really quite involved, but very nice too. I mean, there's the standard ones that we pretty much know because for some reason the singers have been drawn to doing them,
Kath, I just was going through cleaning up stacks of music that's been on my desk for I don't know, the last half century.
Yeah.
And I found a tune on there by, as Lawrence Welk would say, George and his lovely wife Ira Gershwin.
Yeah.
Lawrence Welk actually said that, by the way.
Did he
It's
really? Oh, I
yes, he
thought that was
did.
just a.
No,
I thought that was just a joke.
no, a lot of things Lawrence Welk said were a joke and totally unintended. Anyway, I'm gonna recite some of these lyrics just for the heck of it. See if
Okay.
anybody knows what this is. Things have come to a pretty pass.
Yes.
Our romance is growing flat. For
For
you
you
like this and
and that.
the
The
other,
other.
while I go for this and that. Goodness knows the end will be. Oh, I don't know where I'm at. It looks as if we two will never be one. Something must be done.
I know it. Does
Yes, you
anybody
do,
out
Kat.
there know it? We're asking, do you know that verse to the
What song is that?
Gershwin song?
From
Yeah.
what song is that?
We ought to make a like a little contest, from what
Yeah,
song is that?
yeah, yeah. We could give away a brand new Cadillac if we had one to give
Yeah.
away.
Maybe we could give away Ron Levy. He's here.
Yeah, we could give away Ron Levy's car.
Yeah. How about that, Ron? Well, Dale Boatman is here too. Surely he must have something to give away.
That's my favorite president right there, Dale Boatman. Do you know why, Kathy? Because he's the president of the California Jazz Arts Society,
Aha.
Cal Jazz, which you can find if you Google that. Cal JAS.
Okay, Tony Jones won. So what are we giving him?
Uh, a hearty handshake and a hurrah.
Well, actually, Ron said sure. So, Tony, are you interested in
In
having
Ron's
Ron
car.
or Ron's car? Because we could do that. Ron said sure.
Ron, as you know, Kathy, in the webinar I do, uh, what we call it here in the changes, and I started that actually back in about the middle of last August to supplement what my students do or do not get at the universities. So we talk about chord progressions, and so that the students can learn how to be playing a song they never played before
Yeah.
and hear what's going on and know what this chord is going to and find their way through a tune. And Ron has been, I think it's fair to say, my right hand man and engineer
Yeah.
pretty much since we got started with this thing. So he does what you're doing right now, Kath. Uh, I'm super challenged. So the way you just pulled up that thing from YouTube was like that's like rocket science to me. So that's who Ron Levy is. He's a great pianist, composer, plays jazz and classical, and teaches privately.
Where does Ron live?
Costa Mesa, or as
Oh.
everybody here says, Costa Mesa. It's actually Costa Mesa. Yeah.
Okay. Um, yeah, Tony Jones says he plays Louis on that one on the let's call the whole thing off, you know. And he said you've played with him on that one.
I'm sorry, say that again, Kath.
He said that you have played with him on that one, Tony Jones.
Yes, it's been a while. How you
Yeah.
doing, Tony?
I'm just closing my door here.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to say anything, but I was feeling a draft there, Kathy.
Well, I've been working on my kitchen since July, like a redo, and
Wow.
it's pretty much done, but there's smaller things that are just kind of, cleaning up and getting done. So, yeah. So there.
Okay.
um. So, Luther,
Yes.
I'm almost afraid to ask you. Uh, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? You grew up. Where are you from?
I was born in the bluegrass state, Covington, Kentucky.
Oh,
And for
really?
those, yes, and Covington is right
Oh,
across the river, right across the Ohio River from Cincinnati, Ohio.
huh.
So my parents, say, I was born in Covington. My parents moved across the river to Cincinnati when I was just a wee lad. I don't even remember that happening. So I basically grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio. Had grandparents that lived in a small town in Kentucky, right on the Ohio River called Vanceburg, and another little town called Concord. And I spent, as a child, a fair amount of time, especially in the summers, with my grandparents there. So I definitely have some Kentucky blood in me. And,
Huh. Well, that explains a lot of things.
well, thank you. Thank you very much there, Cathy.
So what were you playing bass then, or were you just interested in music? Or I'm sure your music appreciation came early.
Well, yeah, I guess it did. I can remember as a little kid listening to the top, I think at the time, as I recall, they called it Top 40 Radio, the early days of rock and roll on the stations back in Cincinnati. And I can, God, I haven't thought about this in ages. I can remember like taking some wooden spoons and banging on pots and pans and stuff in the kitchen, listening to that stuff. So yeah, I came. That was my first music. Was that early rock and roll?
Uh-huh.
And well, I guess I have to tell you a little story about that. I know you're familiar with Plas Johnson,
Yeah.
great tenor saxophonist. In case anybody doesn't know, is probably most famous for playing the tenor saxophone on the Pink Panther movies. Oh God,
Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
no, that's a baby elephant walk. Put
Oh,
up, put up, put up,
oh,
put
right.
up, ba-doop be deep, ba-doop be
Ba-da-da-da-da.
yeah, that was baby elephant walk, and that's good. That was going to be one of our quiz questions later. Cathy gave it away. Anyway, a couple of years ago, I was playing a gig with Plaz, and we got to talking, and I told him how those early rock and roll songs, that was my music when I was a kid. And he proceeded to tell me, well, I played on an awful lot of those records. And I said, really? So it turns out Plaz was part of what they now refer to as the Wrecking Crew,
Oh, right.
which was a group of primarily jazz bass players who got into the studios, and as a group they played on everybody's records.
Yeah. Tommy
So I
Tedesco, right? And
so
so many.
I started naming songs, uh, by the Coasters. I loved the Coasters when I was a kid. Remember, who walked in the classroom, cool and slow? Who called the English teacher Daddy-O? Charlie Brown, blah, 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 and there would be Plas playing his tenor.
Oh my
Do
God.
you remember Rockin' Robin? Oh,
Yeah.
da, 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 da,
Yeah,
da, da,
sure.
da, dee, 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 Rockin' Robin, and there would be this piccolo. That was Plas Johnson.
Oh man.
So I after gushing over Plas from playing on my records, the next time I saw Plas, he gave me a CD where he put together a compilation of a bunch of those original songs, and I have to say that
Wow, that is so nice.
that really touched me, and to this day, it's one of my most prized possessions.
Wow, that is really nice.
So that was
Hmm.
my first love of music. I had an uncle who lived in Portsmouth, Ohio, another town right on the Ohio River,
Yeah.
and he was into country music. And as a child, I remember he rented a theater in Portsmouth and did a live radio broadcast of what was essentially a local version of the Grand Ole Opry.
Huh.
And so I spent a lot of time as a kid with him and would hear that music. So I came to like and came to love country music and bluegrass and
Do you
so
still
those
listen to it?
sometimes, yeah, there's a station on Sirius satellite radio in my car. The one I mostly listen to now is the bluegrass station. But bluegrass music has evolved. Back in those early days, it was like people who were self-taught. Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys, Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs, the Oz.
sometime I should introduce you, or I'll introduce you, I'll send you her name, but there's a singer named Evie Layden who she is a, a clogger, but I mean like a clogger, like really good. She plays incredible banjo. She plays some guitar. She's a songwriter, singer. She does body percussion because her husband is Keith Terry, who's like a major body percussionist. But
Huh.
you should, if you have some time, you should put on, like, while you're cleaning up your your old music things, you should put on the interview that I did with her, because I think you'd really like it. And she really brought my awareness up to that music.
Give me her name again, Cass.
Evie
Uh-huh.
Layden, Ladin.
And you say she's like essentially a cloggerist, sort of, I guess.
Yeah, and banjo, man, she's like incredible on the banjo, and she's really tied in with that music, and just like really, I mean, that, talk about a music from America.
Yeah, yeah.
That is the music from America.
Yes.
I mean, jazz, of course, is too, but that that is really born in America. And it's, yeah, just really, it's really cool. The conversation was really cool. I think you'd really like hearing her.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, back in the early days, people were self-taught and did amazingly well. But the younger people today, I'm hearing on this Sirius satellite radio
It's
station,
they're taking it somewhere else.
man, chops like serious jazz players, whether they're playing banjo or mandolin, fiddle as they call
Yeah.
it. It's like, it's astounding the chops these people have.
I don't know if you heard, did you happen to hear Christian McBride's tribute to Chick? It was like a
No.
2.5 hour thing. It's really nice. Talk about putting something on in the background and just
Yeah.
But he had Bella Bartok on,
Whoa.
and Bella was
You,
so,
you mean Bella, not Bella Bartok.
not Bella Bartok,
He
Bella,
died last week. Bella Fleck.
yeah, Bella Fleck. Sorry,
That was a good one, Kat.
that was a good one. Sorry about that.
And they jammed on his string quartets.
That's definitely a COVID brain reaction.
Yeah, that was a good one there again, Kat.
Thanks. So Tony Jones, I interviewed him. He's got a very interesting background too. So his grandfather, Leon Ranier, wrote, recorded, and produced Rockin' Robin,
Wow.
and Plaz was his
Yeah.
regular stable.
Wow. Oh, that is cool.
Isn't that cool?
That's great. Wow. Yeah, so that was my first music. Then in high school, some local professional guys came and played a concert at our high school. And I was just, as they say, I was smitten with the bass. So I went up to the bass player, who became my teacher, and I said, I'd really like to learn to play jazz on bass like that. Will you teach me? And he said, kid, if you want to learn to play jazz bass, first thing you got to do is you got to learn how to play the bass, and then we'll talk about jazz later. And he was kind of gruff, but I loved him, man. He became my teacher and got me decent enough to get into the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music after about a year. His name was Alex Searin, and he had played with Woody Herman's band and with Mary McPartland. He was originally from the Boston area, and he was a wonderful player.
Huh.
And a wonderful mentor. Wonderful guy. Anyway, so that's what got me started. I don't know. Some people say, why did you pick the bass? I really didn't. I felt like the bass picked me. Thanks, bass. Why couldn't I play something easy to carry? Like the piccolo, like Plas Johnson. You
Speaking of piccolo, Lori Bell is here.
Well, hi, Lori.
She said, "Remember when we played together for Dave Mackay's 80th birthday?"
Oh yeah,
Hmm.
what a wonderful man he was. Such a great musician and a wonderful human being and a real inspiration.
Yes, he was.
David was a sightless pianist and wrote some great tunes. First time I heard of Dave Mackay was with that record he did with Vicky Hamilton.
That was a long time ago.
I'll see you later on. Boy, what a great tune that was.
Yeah, that was a great tune.
That was a He was a real inspiration to every time I would work with Dave in a club in LA or somewhere. He, even though he was sightless, it seems like he memorized the layout of the clubs. I remember I would give him, give him a hand getting him into the restroom, and he'd say, "I got it from here." He knew where everything was in the bathrooms in all these clubs. It seemed like he was an amazing.
Yeah, he had a lot of sensory um, use. He was
Yes.
great. One time, Vicky Pedrini and I shared um, walking him around the IAJE. And every time we'd see each other, we'd say, "Where's Dave? Do you have Dave?"
Oh!
And so that got to be a joke with Vicky and I. But yeah, Dave, I went to Japan with him too once, and
Wow.
he was never a problem. It
No.
was always very easy to be with him as far as being with a blind person and kind of leading them around.
Yes.
And
Yes.
his sensitivity in music was really amazing.
Oh
His
yeah.
left hand, I was always fascinated that he had such um, independence,
Mm-hmm.
in his hands, and they each really sounded like a different personality, playing together, but really nice.
He. I loved from the first time I heard him play. I always wanted to play with him for a long time before I got to. Andy Simpkins usually played with him.
Oh yeah,
I'm sorry, I forgot to turn my landline off. It's
that's okay. Andy
probably.
Simpkins, yeah, just you know what? When I heard them at Chadney's, I think it was that small. I can't. I can never remember his name. It was a short black drummer who eventually moved up to San Francisco. Remember, Dave had that trio, Andy and this drummer, and him for a while. Because when I first came to town, they were playing like at Filthy McNasty's and all those places.
Yeah.
And Andy, I literally fell off my fell off my chair in Chadney's listening to Andy. I
He
fell
was
off. I was
marvelous.
just so wow.
Andy was one of my very first bass heroes. He was playing with the Three Sounds,
Hmm.
and I remember sneaking into a club called the Living Room in Cincinnati
Huh.
to hear them, and I went up and talked to him early on a break, and he was so kind to me. I'll never forget his kindness to me.
Wow.
And then I found out that he was staying at the hotel just down the street from the club. So every night then I would go wait outside until he came down to carry his bass and wheel it down to the club and talk to him. Andy's very special. Man, he was a wonderful musician. Played great bass lines, fine soloist. He was just a wonderful guy. I could go on and on, but that's enough about Andy. But yeah,
Isn't it
Dave.
amazing? Isn't it amazing that we have this huge library, or that's the wrong word, but um, of musicians, great jazz musicians who um, really were not. I think for the most part, the jazz musicians were um, spiritual mentors
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they all, this is all over the planet. As a matter of fact, I was gonna show you a record. Maybe a little later I'll get it. You know, my husband collects records, and
Hmm.
a friend of ours, Roland Askeron's, hi Roland. Oh, he's watching us in his Tesla.
Cool.
um, he gave us some records, and I got a Eddie Lockjaw Davis with arrangements by Oliver Nelson, and I forget the other guy's name. He was from the Count Basie Orchestra. And this record was totally amazing. But
Wow.
on the back, the liner notes,
Yeah.
Eddie said just, it was really right out of that, like you really felt like you were sitting with him, listening to him talk. And he was, you know, he was talking about, it was very interesting. He was talking about how young people today, you know, whenever that was, because they couldn't find a year on it, were um, they were playing a lot of fast notes and not, you know, really playing the music from the right perspective.
And from the heart.
Yeah, and it was just,
Yeah.
and it was beautiful. He even made a comment about if I can't remember exactly. It was something about when the if kids could dress up in their finery and go to these ballrooms to hear jazz, they wouldn't be hanging out on the corner in their leather pants and jacket and getting into trouble. It was so interesting. But as I was saying, it's just so beautiful. That's one of the reasons I like sitting in on your class, because you're talking about all these classic jazz musicians, most of whom I know, but some I don't. And it's just endless. It's endless how many people were out there doing this and probably supporting society without society really knowing it, you know?
Hmm.
What
What
do you
else?
think about that, Luther Hughes? What do you think about the kind of ethics and the presence of jazz musicians across time?
Well, uh, like I say, with people that were mentors to me, I guess Andy would have to be my first mentor.
Yeah.
Then I wound up spending many years with the late great Gene Harris, who originally started the Three Sounds. It's funny
Right.
when I would go in to hear Andy playing with the Three Sounds in that club, I remember thinking, this Harris seems like an arrogant snob. He became not only a mentor, you know, but a dear friend. He was like my big brother I never had, and my best friend,
Really?
all rolled up into one. Yeah.
Oh.
uh, we had a great relationship. People would hear us sometimes and think, "You guys mad at each other?" Something like we would argue. We would argue like an old, as they say, the old saying goes, an old married couple. Uh, but he was just great. Uh, Ray Brown became a mentor. Ray Brown, uh, after playing with Gene, I guess I started with Gene maybe in mid 1970 or something. Moved to L.A. from Cincinnati to work with Gene. We were traveling all over the country at that time, a lot,
Yeah.
and I made the decision that I needed to be home more. And I had met Ray at the Kansas City Jazz Festival where I performed with Gene. And I was young and brash, and
You were brash?
yeah, a little bit, probably because of the rash, but that made me brash.
Brash because of the rash.
That's right. At any rate, I had met Ray at that festival, so I had the nerve to call him and say, "Hi, Ray. I don't know if you remember me, and he remembered me." And I said, "I'm not traveling with Gene anymore," and I still can't believe I did this, but I said, "So I'm available, Ray. So if you hear of anything, I'm available."
That was brash.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I was at the time because I remember he said, "Well," he said, "Are you working this New Year's Eve? It must have been early December or something like that. I said, no. He said, do you want to cover a gig for me? And I said, oh, I guess, Ray, So he sent me to sub for him with Louis Bellson's big band
Wow.
and his wife Pearl Bailey at remember the
Wow.
old Coconut Grove?
Well, I don't remember it, but yeah.
That was like the supper club in Los Angeles. So I played that job. A couple days later, Ray called and said, Louis liked you. He liked the way you played with him. And I'm so busy now. He said, I don't really have time to do the band anymore, which was a lie. But he said, so would you like to take over playing bass in Louis Bellson's band? I said, yeah. Well, at that time, like I say, I'm in my early 20s, and it was a band of legends. It had who was that kid playing guitar? Joe something. Oh yeah, Joe Pass was the guitar player. He had people in the trumpet section like Blue Mitchell, I think, was on the band at first. Sweets Edison.
Huh.
Blue, I knew from the records he did with Horace Silver, amongst many others.
Yeah.
Sweets Edison, who had been on the Basie band for years. Snooky Young, another legendary guy.
The
It was
Tonight Show.
saxophone players. Marshall Royal,
Oh God.
uh, Jerome Richardson.
Wow.
It was just an amazing band. So yeah, Ray, and he also sent me to
Who was the
cover a
piano
gig.
player?
As I recall, it was Nat Pierce.
Oh, wow.
I went on to
Nice.
play with Nat, with Dave Pell, had a group called the Prez
Yep.
Conference,
I remember
which was
that.
like super sax, but Lester Young harmonized solos.
Yeah, that was a good band. Great arrangement.
It was a great band.
Yeah.
That was Frankie Cap and Nat Pierce.
Yeah. Frankie Cap.
Nat was such a character. He had played in the Woody Herman band and used to write a lot of arrangements for Woody's band. And I remember he liked to brag that he was the greatest big band piano player in the world, right after Count Basie.
Gosh.
He had to qualify.
I wonder if he traveled with Frankie Cap. Sounds like something
Well,
Frankie Cap would have said.
yeah. Well, I did some tours with the guys. We went to Japan and maybe Europe. I don't remember for sure. I
Yeah.
definitely remember going to Japan, but
I'm sorry. I just have to say before I forget that Ed Bennett says hi.
oh, hi, Ed. Wow.
Yeah.
Haven't
Blast from the past, huh?
Yeah, Ed and I both spent some time. He spent quite a bit more than I did with Carmen McRae.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
I think, as a matter of fact, I think Ed came in when Carmen fired me.
Oh,
She
those
was
singers, those damn singers.
she was
I'm
something else. She
actually
was
now, and let's talk about her, but Pearl Bailey was no easy trick either, right?
oh God.
She was a case.
She was very kind to me. She would
Really?
I
Huh.
remember she was working at a Starlight Theater. God, how can I remember that? In Kansas City, it was an outdoor theater, and the local bass player wasn't cutting it, and she called me, or maybe it was her secretary or somebody. Anyway, I got to call. Could I please come out there and play with her? Which I did, and when I got there, I don't know if it was the end of the gig or whatever, but she bought a shirt for me, and I thought that was sweet.
Yeah.
So that was that side of Pearl.
Oh, very nice.
I
I
have
could
to
never quite like looking at her and Louis Bellson as a couple.
yeah.
Just didn't really make sense because she was pretty hard edged, you know, and Louis was about the softest marshmallow in the
Oh,
pack.
he was a wonderful man.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you a story, another story about Pearl. We were in Washington playing. We were there to do a gig for some, I think it was a secretary of state from all over the world or something. So it was for the State Department.
Okay.
So we're performing for this dinner. So we get there to rehearse in the afternoon. Louis there, and I forget who was playing piano. So we're in this big ballroom, and we start rehearsing, and all the people are putting out the dishes and getting the silverware, setting the tables and preparing everything for the evening's event. And and Pearls decided she didn't want those people in there while we were rehearsing. So she talked to whoever was in charge and had them taken out. And then she turns to me and says, I understand why these people want to stay in here, because they were all, listening as they're doing their work. She says that I know why they want to do it, because they all love me. Well, this was right after I'd been working with Gene Harris. And like I say, we used to argue over the color of the sky. We would argue about anything. So when she says, all these people just love me, that's the relationship I was used to having with my boss. So as soon as she said, yeah, they all, I said, whoa, Pearl, wait a minute. I said, I'm sure a lot of these people, enjoy you as an entertainer and respect you. But I said, but they don't love you. And man, she threw a fit. And I'm standing there arguing with her about this like I always did with Gene. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute. It occurred to me that she had had a heart attack sometime before that. And she was getting so fired up. I thought, oh, I forgot about that. I've got to back off. So I let it die down. So then I'm walking out away from the rehearsal, out of the room, and Louis next to me, and he puts his arm on my shoulder, and he says, and I said, Louis, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get Pearl so upset. And he always called me Luth. He said, it's okay, Luth. He said, I just find that the best thing to do with Pearl is just to keep quiet. But after that, we were fine,
Funny.
She was quite an entertainer.
Yeah.
It was an honor to work with her. She was one heck of an entertainer, singer, and just all around entertainer.
Yeah, she was really a high quality artist. I
was.
remember somebody, I don't remember who it was. It might have been Andy McIntosh. They were doing a gig at like Budweiser, that Budweiser place where they have this big lake in there, and then you're.
Oh yeah, that was up here in L.A.
Yeah,
Busch Gardens.
Busch Gardens, yeah, and they
yes.
It was freezing, and so freezing you had to have your coat.
How
on.
Freezing was it?
It was so freezing you had to have your winter coat. Anyway, she didn't want them to wear the coats, and. Like a small group of the horn players said bye, and they actually left.
Whoa.
Yeah, because it was just too, it was too friggin' cold.
Wow.
What? So Carmen McRae. Let's go to Carmen McRae. Then we should play a little music of you.
I really enjoyed playing with Carmen. She was such a good musician.
Yeah.
She could play some piano, and
yeah.
And as I recall, Ed can verify this with me, but according to my recollection, she would play like maybe one or two tunes a night, maybe start the set by just accompanying herself at the piano.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really impressed with that. She was so musical. At that time, I was able to get an audition for my friend Marshall Otwell.
Yeah.
On piano, and Marshall played with her for many years.
Was that when you must have played with Frank Severino?
No, Frank was before me. What a wonderful guy Frankie was. We could talk about Frankie for hours.
I know.
Joey Barron was playing drums with us at that time. Joey's like a big shot in New York now. He has been for a long time. Very musical player. Great sense of humor.
Yeah.
But I remember a friend of mine who had worked with Carmen before I took the gig. When I told him I was going to do it, he said, okay, here's what you got to do. He said, as soon as you finish the set, get off the stage and get as far away from her as you can, because she was notorious, for yelling at people on the stand and
Yeah, I
R.I.P.
saw her do that. Yep.
Jimmy Rolls.
Really?
Oh, there's a story about her, stopping and yelling at Jimmy Rolls, as I recall, at a concert in London or something. And Jimmy got up from the piano, stopped in the middle of the song, went to the microphone, and I've heard different versions of this, but basically he went to the microphone and said something to the effect of, "I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really not a musician," or something. "Stamps is my thing." Something along those lines. And walked out and caught the next plane home.
Oh my God.
For somebody that doesn't know who Jimmy Rolls was, he was like one of the just great piano players and arguably maybe the finest accompanist
Yeah.
in
He
the world.
played a lot with Billie Holiday.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
played with everybody.
He was
What
great.
a wonderful player. And anyway, so this is what my friend told me: get away from her so you don't get in any arguments and stuff with her. But you can guess what I did. I would do just the opposite. I would come off the stage and say, "Hey, Carmen, you did pretty good tonight." I would joke around with her and mess with her, and she never yelled at me. I heard stories about her yelling at Gene Chirico, bass player,
Huh.
on a gig, and he stopped and yelled at her on the stage, as the story goes. The only time she got cross with me, I remember we were playing a place in San Diego, and the cord from my amp shorted out, and it went, and she turned around and gave me this look, and I just said, "Sorry, Carmen." I said, "I'll replace it. I'll be with you in just a second." That was as close as she ever came to yelling at me. But she was marvelous. She was so musical. And I remember when I first joined her, she was like Shirley Horn. She would do a ballad, a tempo like 1, 2, 3, 4. I was used to playing like greasy groove and shuffles with Gene Harris and stuff. So that it terrified me at the time. But I remember I finally got to the point where I thought, I just have to not think about it. I just have to let go, and it'll take care of itself. And it did. But it was wonderful with Joey Barron and Marshall Otwell. They were marvelous players. Marshall, by the way, lives up around San Luis Obispo now.
Yeah.
Up on the Central Coast. I've
Yeah.
seen him a couple times in the last few years.
Have you seen his brother at all?
No, Charlie, who's another great piano player.
Yeah.
His younger brother played for years with Poncho Sanchez, but I don't think he plays at all anymore. I think he got into, I don't remember exactly.
Some other money-making straighter job?
Well, it was something else in education. I don't know, became a literary guy, or I don't know. But it was something like that had nothing to do with music. Marshall, by the way, stopped playing for years. He got into computers, I think it was software or something.
Yeah.
And did really well in that for many years, and then decided he wanted to play again. So now he's playing more. I've played with him a couple times here in the last few years. My friend Charlie Shoemake, great vibraphonist, C to vibes. That's what I'm doing here. Charlie lives in Cambria and has hosted jazz concerts up there for over 20 years now.
Yeah.
Last few years, he's had Marshall come in and play. It was a nice reunion. I always had a good time with him.
That's nice. Yeah. Ed Bennett, I like how he says, Carmen, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Oh, good one, Ed.
I know. That's pretty funny. And Tony Jones said that Tad Weed recorded her rants.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'd never, that must be like the Buddy Rich bus.
Oh, God. I'll never forget when I heard the tapes. I had heard about it, of course, that Buddy Rich was an asshole. And, but the tapes, I must have picked my jaw up off the ground. It was just so horrific. And then, but then people said, people like yourself said he was great. He was great with professionals who, who
Yeah,
did the job great,
yeah.
and he was just basically scaring those young players into
He
either
was a
either you
he was
step up or you lie down, man.
he was a bully. That's what it amounted to. But now I remember talking to Louis Belson about him, and he and Louis were very close. Uh, they were very good friends. And matter of fact, I remember back in the day, as I recall, Louis Buddy had a heart attack and had to cancel a bunch of gigs. So he asked Louis to step in and play drums and lead the band for him while he was recovering, which he did. So
That's nice. Didn't they do something together? I feel like there was a concert or something, or a record, or something that they did together. You don't know?
I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Another name comes to my mind, somebody, a musician that everybody said was like mean and could be really nasty, was Benny Goodman.
Oh, hmm.
Did you ever hear that?
No, I don't think I did.
A lot of players would get in arguments with him, and my friend Mundell Lowe, great guitarist, quit
Huh.
and was fired multiple times. And I've heard a lot of musicians over the years talk about Benny, would somebody be playing and Benny would be standing there with his arms crossed holding his clarinet, just doing this,
Oh, God.
staring at him.
Jeez.
But my friend George Van Epps, another legendary guitar player,
Yeah.
guy who invented the 7-string guitar, for instance,
Yeah.
George said, I don't think he was trying to be mean. That was just the way he was when instead of just looking at somebody softly, he would get this intent listening thing. But George said, I don't think he was trying to intimidate anybody or be mean with that stuff.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows?
Ron Levy said he thinks that Charlie Otwell is a philosophy professor now.
Oh, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ron. I
Really?
knew Ron would know. It's why Ron is my right hand man.
Charlie, I just remember I worked with Charlie, and he was really nice. He was really nice. And Joyce asked, and there were a lot, Joyce. She said, how do these band leaders have such longevity and success being holes? But, because the music was so great and popular, right?
Yeah.
And also they kept the bands working, So, I mean, that's a lot, to keep a band
Yeah.
working.
Yes, exactly.
um,
I watched, speaking of band leaders, my wife and I watched a thing on Count Basie, in his words. I think that's what it was. It was a special, was on PBS that we watched recently, and everybody in the band loved him. But I didn't know this. They said that the Count was like a habitual gambler.
Oh.
One of the guys said he would gamble on anything.
Huh.
Said when they would check in to the hotel in a new city, if there was a racetrack, he would go up to the room, drop his stuff off, get a taxi, and go to the racetrack.
Wow.
Guy said he lost a lot of money gambling.
Huh.
So on the bus, guys would be playing cards and say, "Okay, I'll bet you $2," and they said, "Well, I'll bet you 10." So. But boy, what a
Yeah.
apparently all the guys, from what I understand, the guys all really loved him. He was a good guy.
Yeah. Ed, we're going to have to get you on here sometime because he has some great stories about Frank, Severino, and Carmen. And, it's funny because Frank was a very dear friend of mine. He was kind of like a jazz dad for me because when I came here, I was 21 and I worked for a year and a half at Dante's.
Wow.
And Frank was one of the first musicians who befriended me, brought me to his house, with his wife and his kid. And, and he had a guitar that was Jobim's. The Jobim had broken, like Frank was in the audience and Jobim had broken it and just left it on the stage and Frank took it and fixed it. That was his guitar. But
wow.
what he told me And maybe my mind, I believe you that you played with Joey, but maybe my mind is just construed something. But he told me that when Marshall got into the band, that he was playing, and Marshall, he found out that Marshall was making more money than him, and
Oh,
he'd been with her for 9 years, and so
oh man.
he said he confronted her and he said, why are you paying me less than Marshall? And she said, well, he asked. And
Oh, I
that's when
remember
he
hearing
quit.
that story. I remember hearing that story.
Yeah.
Wow.
But maybe that's when Joey got in, because he quit. Frank quit,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
What a great player he was and wonderful guy. I have a picture that he cut out from a magazine or something.
Yeah.
I'll have to show you sometime. I won't do it now, but
Okay.
it's a picture of I'm thinking of the politically correct term, a small person, like a dwarf or something.
Okay.
And the dwarf is like got the attachments, so the harmonica is here, and he's playing a bass drum with his foot, and he's got cymbals, strapped on around his knees, and he had an accordion. And Frank wrote in the caption, "May your music always be deep and meaningful." That's another one of my prized possessions.
He had a funny sense of humor.
He was great, and
you know what I loved about him was that he would laugh at himself a lot, like literally laugh, and it made you laugh too, He
he was
such a
another
kind.
inspirational guy. Oh, by the way, when you mentioned Dante's, in case somebody out there doesn't know, that was like a legendary jazz club located in North Hollywood on Cahuenga Boulevard, was it?
Lancashire.
Lancashire. Well,
Yeah.
those two words sound almost exactly the
Yeah,
same to
I know
me.
what you mean.
Hard to tell the difference.
That
But that was a great place. That's where I first
was.
played with Louis Bellson's band, too.
Yeah, that I was there at the end of the really good times, and then when I left, that was when his son took over, and
Oh
it was
yeah,
just really goofy. It was so stupid. And then he
yeah,
died, of course, in the club, Carrie.
Terry, yeah.
And the Japanese people who were going to buy the club backed out because they thought, no, that's too weird. But Carrie was a sweetheart too, but he was manic. And so, but he really supported the musicians. He had a crazy wife who drove him absolutely berserk. Do you remember her? May, she was really beautiful. She was younger and beautiful, and she flirted with everybody big time and just drove him totally crazy. And did you know that he was a choreographer and a dancer? And
No.
he choreographed and danced in what's that movie? Luck Be a Lady Tonight. What's that big movie?
Was it Pal Joey?
No, it was about the gamblers with Frank Sinatra was in it. It was a musical. Help me out here, people. I know,
Ron Levy. Come on, Ron Levy. What show was that, Ron?
or Joyce or Toby. I know you know this.
That's
Um,
right. Somebody knows
anyway,
it.
he was the choreographer and Guys and Dolls. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chris.
Who said
Uh,
that? Who told us?
Joyce Glasgow and
Thank,
Dale
thank.
Boatman. Thanks, Dale.
Oh, thanks, Prez.
Yeah,
My
so
goodness.
if you look real carefully, you'll see a young Carrie. He was tall.
Wow.
He didn't have the beard that
Yeah.
he grew to have. But yeah,
Wow.
so he played and he choreographed it. So sometimes he would just like whisk us little waitresses around, in some dance move that we didn't have to do anything. He just picked us up and whisked us around.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Oh man, I never saw that.
he was cool. He was a Gemini too, besides being manic. So that was probably triply like messing with his head. His wife, Gemini and Manic. Yeah.
Dante's was the scene, as I recall. Like the guys from the Johnny Carson's Tonight Show band would come in there after work, and they were making good money, so they would
Yeah.
come in there and play just for their beer tab, as I
Yeah.
recall. Is
Yeah.
that
That's
yeah?
exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. And luckily, the bartender was that guy, Bob, who had a heavy hand. Do you remember?
Yeah,
He was
big kind of a big
tall.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He took
Wow. Oh
pictures.
man.
Yeah. And so he had a very heavy hand, which was
Wow.
another reason why the musicians always came in too.
One of my favorite memories, and I wasn't there to see this, but I believe this happened. I heard from many sources. Is, uh, Jake Hanna was working there one night, and he's sitting at the bar. You know the story.
I don't know, maybe,
He
but
said he
Jake
said
was
he
always
said,
there.
"Oh, Jake, great drummer, played for years with Woody Herman and played with everybody. Had a magical pulse when he would play.
Magical.
It was it's hard to you can't describe it. It was just something magical about the way it felt.
Yeah.
So Jake is sitting at the bar, and somebody came up to the bar and said, "Hey, did you guys hear? One of the Beatles just got shot. It was the night John Lennon was killed." And Jake picks up his beer. One down, three to go.
That's Jake.
Jake, if it wasn't about jazz and swing, Jake didn't want to hear anything about it. It was like Antichrist, music or something. He didn't want to hear about it. So,
He was so funny. He was
oh
from
my,
Boston and he actually knew my dad because
oh
my
my
dad
God.
was a local sax player who led bands and, was
Wow.
a real guy, a union guy.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to too many people who knew my dad, but Jake actually knew him. And that was pretty cool.
Isn't that something?
Um, and then the other funny guy in those times was Nick Ceroli.
Oh, yeah.
One of the funniest guys I've ever met. He just was naturally funny. Everything that came out of his mouth was funny. And he was a great drummer too, of course.
He sure was. I remember he used to I remember hearing him, as I recall, with the Bob Florence band.
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
played with everybody. He was a great all around drummer.
Yeah.
Maybe best known, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe best known for his big band drumming. Boy,
Yeah, probably, I
he was
think.
something else. So he was remarkable.
You know who else was a waitress with me was Mary Margaret. God, what was her? Mary Margaret. What was your last name? Well,
And
now
Margaret.
no, I always think of her now as Larry McGuire's wife. Remember him, the trumpet player, big band
Yeah.
trumpet player?
Yeah.
He was a great player. And actually, he was a friend of Charlie Shoemake's too. So maybe you saw him
Huh.
when you were, hanging out there at Charlie's, because they moved into that area. But Mary Margaret actually met Larry back then, and that's when they got together. Then they got married, and they've been together all these years.
I think that goes back to when I worked with Louis there. It had to be mid 70s, maybe a little slightly earlier than mid.
Yeah,
But that was a happening place, man. I
it's
was lucky
totally
enough.
happening.
I was lucky enough to play there with so many wonderful players. Did a quartet there with
Yeah.
a great tenor saxophonist Joe Farrell.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah, I remember those. I
John,
remember those days.
John Guerin was the drummer,
Yep.
and Russell Ferrante,
Yep.
who later went on to co-found the Yellow Jackets. He was our piano player.
Yes, he did. I remember those days very well. That's when I was there.
Used to play with my dear friend Ron Eschete with our trio with John Perrette.
Oh yeah, John
You
Perrette. I
remember
remember
John?
him too.
John's in Portland now. I'm doing right.
Yeah. Um, what do you think? Gene Harris, Luther and Friends, Honeysuckle
Well,
Road.
hold back up, back up. That one right there from '94.
Yeah.
Report from the Western.
Okay.
Live performance from '94. I don't know if I seen this.
Huh.
Reader's Digest.
So before we play it, it's Ron Eschete on guitar,
Yes.
Paul Humphrey.
Yes. Paul
Wow.
Hump. The Hump.
Huh. Cool. Okay.
Oh boy. Okay, so we're going to play a little music for you, all right? Sit back and relax.
Oh!
Oh, yeah. I hear you, Luther.
I'll try to do better.
Wow, your bass is really solid.
Look at that attitude. Dig Ranier comping.
Wow. Yeah, I know. Dig it, man. So good. His drumming is so amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Woo. Now there is some some
Some
shit,
serious
man.
swinging. Boy.
Wow, you are so friggin' solid. And you really hear you. And Ralph played, there's something about his playing that's really interesting. It's like
I'm sorry, you're talking about who are you talking about now?
the drummer.
Oh, Paul.
Oh,
Paul
Paul.
Humphrey.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I substituted the name.
Yes, I do that a lot too.
Yeah. So, but his drumming was like, I don't know how to explain it, but it was kind of like not this way, but it was this way. Wow. I don't know. I mean,
That's a good way to put it, Kat.
wow. And that it just brings to mind, like I always try and tell my students, that the timekeeper is the bass. It doesn't mean that the other players don't have good time and you're not reacting to what they're doing and their time stuff, but it's the bass, right?
Well, the check's in the mail, Kath. Now, Paul was something. He quite a character. I'll leave it at that. But having said that, he had played with people like Wes Montgomery. He had a hit of his own, some sort of a drum thing. Who out there in the chat room knows what Paul Humphrey's hit was? It was literally a hit.
Oh,
I just can't remember the name of it. But he had done everything from all the jazz people to he spent I don't know how many years with Lawrence Welk and his Champagne Music Makers. Did you know that, Kath?
I did not, and I wouldn't have imagined it.
And he always spoke very warmly and affectionately about Lawrence Welk. Apparently, Lawrence
Wow.
was really good to his musicians.
Huh. Isn't that interesting? Do you know Ann Stockdale?
No.
She's here, and she said, sorry to jump away from what you're saying, but
No. Jump.
Nick was a trip, Nick Ceroli, and he played
Yes.
on a couple of her recordings and introduced her to Dave Frischberg, who she recorded a lot of her songs with, and she loved
Wow.
Dante's. And but yeah, that was and Ron Eschete, what an interesting choice for a guitar player with Gene, totally, I mean, totally groovy, of course, but
Oh yeah.
so, um, you know, his harmony is so progressive, and so it's interesting to have a real straight swinging, stringing, groovy piano player, and then have that kind of, it's not really ethereal, but the harmony is really
He could play. He could play. Well, Ron is really a very complete musician. Harmonically, his hero was like Bill Evans. So he came from that aspect of really understanding how harmony and what we call musical term upper extensions. Okay, I'll try to explain upper extensions. If chords are built stacked in intervals of thirds. So if we have a 1, 3, 5, 7, if that's a dominant seventh chord, we'll call that. That might be a B flat. I'm singing, not sure. B flat, D, F, A flat, C, E, G. Those are upper extensions. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13. So Ron is well versed in playing those higher notes, which Charlie Parker was a master at, by the way. That's how Charlie kind of changed things from playing 1, 3, 5, 7 and basic scales like that to start expanding the harmonic vocabulary, we might say.
Yeah.
But so Ron was a master at that, but he came from a little town outside New Orleans called Houma, Houma. I remember Ron and I were playing at a place called Hungry Joe's in Huntington Beach in the very early 70s with Dave Pike,
Yeah.
vibraphonist. Ted Hawk played drums. Tom Ranier was playing piano.
Yeah.
And one night, Dave Pike is introducing the guys in the bands and where we're from. And he said, and from Ron Eschete from Houma, Louisiana. And somebody in the audience goes, ha ha, Houma. And Ronnie turns to me, and we still laugh about this to this day. He turned to me and says, people just don't travel anymore. So anyway, all this is to say Ronnie has that grease and that blues, from that New Orleans thing in his blood, that mixed with the other thing. Ron did such a great job with Gene because Gene would go,
Yeah, yeah,
Ronnie's going, beat on
yeah,
3, 4, 1, beat. So he's playing things that are not going to get in the way. Reminds me of Horace Silver. The way Horace would comp, he would play things that would enhance the groove of the tune.
yeah.
So Ronnie did that. And then Ronnie was with us for a long time. And then Frank Potenza came on.
Oh,
And Frank continued that tradition of
yeah,
Frank knew
definitely.
just team players,
Yeah,
great team, and that's what you got to do anytime you're playing in a band. You must be a team player.
yeah. How long
So,
were you with Gene?
well, like I say, I started with him around mid 1970, and I played off and on with him until he passed away in, I want to say 2001, maybe. So that's a long time, over
Yeah.
30 years. Gene went, when I first joined him, he was living in Los Alamitos in Orange County. Then he wound up, he tried to get into like the kind of a more of a funky pop thing. And he wound up taking a group doing that kind of stuff, as I recall, to Boise, Idaho. And to make a long story short, he met a wonderful woman up there, Janie Harris. They fell in love, and he decided to stay there. And then
And
he became.
therefore, little Nicky was born.
No. So she
Oh,
was from Gene's first wife back in Benton Harbor, Michigan.
oh,
Had 3 daughters and a son from those early days.
huh.
But Gene became a real fixture in Boise, Idaho. He became friends with the then governor, whose name I forget right now, but who was an amateur clarinet player.
Hmm.
So Gene wound up settling in Boise, to make a long story short.
Yeah.
Had a gig at a local hotel playing solo piano. And the governor used to come in and sit in with him. So he became like the goodwill ambassador for Idaho because of his association with the governor.
Interesting. Which is a lot to say for Boise, because Boise, not my favorite place I've visited.
Well, I'd have to say, because of Gene living there, we used to go up and play there quite a bit, and the people were extremely nice, very warm, very friendly with us. I'd have to say I liked it. My wife Becky said it always reminded her of Orange County from when she was a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a nice feel to it. By the way, in the later days, I mentioned Frank Potenza joining the quartet, and Paul Kreibich was the last drummer to work with us with Gene too. Frank and Paul and I had some wonderful times together. But anyway, so yeah, Gene, over the course of his career, he got hooked up with, I don't know how, the Philip Morris Corporation, and they sent him on a world tour with the Philip Morris Super Band,
Huh.
which Gene asked me to do, and I still kick myself today that I didn't do it because it was paying a lot of money. I don't remember why I decided not to, but he wound up getting some young guy to play bass with the band, Ray Brown or something like that. But then, later on, he put together a quartet and called me to do that. And so then, he was definitely one of the bright points of my life. The other had to be Horace Silver, I would have to say.
Yeah. Let me close my blinds a little bit. Wanted to ask you, I've never really had a lot of association with your wife, but she's a singer.
Yeah, she is.
And when you guys met, were you working together or how?
Now, she taught elementary school
Uh,
in Hawaiian Gardens.
huh.
Hawaiian Gardens, not in Hawaii, but
Los
right next to
Angeles.
Long Beach. She
Yeah.
taught there for 35 years. And
Oh, wow.
and when she used to sing some for her kids, and I'd never heard her sing really other than singing to her kids in the classroom or a little bit around the house or something.
Yeah.
So for her 50th birthday, I said, "What do you want for your birthday? Is this a big deal? Want to go to Hawaii or something?" She said, "I'd like to record some stuff." I said, "Okay." So I said, "Well, who do you want to play with us?" And the only people she knew were my musician friends. So she said, "Well, Lou Matthews," and she chose these guys because she knew them and thought they wouldn't laugh at her or throw things at her, I guess, you know. Lou Matthews, who I wound up working with, Nancy Wilson with Lou, and
One of the
played
best
a lot with him.
accompanists
Oh,
ever.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And Ronnie Eschete and Paul Kreibich. So Lou and I split the chores on arranging the tunes. I let her choose the tunes. She chose great tunes. We went in the studio and I said, "Okay, darling, now we haven't played through these arrangements. We're going to play through them. Here, you stand in this isolation booth, which will be where you'll sing from, and try to sing along as best you can." Well, one of the first ones we did, she wanted to sing "The Shadow of Your Smile." Well, Lou wrote this arrangement in 3/4.
Mm.
And I thought, oh boy. Well, she started singing along with us and fell right into it. So I learned immediately she has really good natural instincts and a good voice. So that started things. So we did that. We've only done that one CD. I'm really thinking about doing another one, like with a either big band or an orchestra,
Wow.
to do some nice stuff. We have friends that are great arrangers who've volunteered to help with some arrangements on that.
Wow,
So,
that would be great.
but yeah, so we've been for the past several years we've been partnered with the Cal Jazz Arts Society, of course, as I mentioned, by President Dale Boatman. Yay, Prez! So we've been doing house concerts. Dale, how long have we been doing this with you? Put that in the chat room. But like, you know, once every couple months we'll have a house concert. And so she and Dale's a good singer too, by the way.
Oh,
Oh, you didn't know that, did you?
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. And Dale plays some guitar. He's a very
Uh-huh.
talented guy,
Yeah.
in addition to being a wonderful guy and a dear friend. Can I get a raise, Dale? At any rate, so we started doing these house concerts. So Dale and Becky always sing a couple tunes, and then I invite different guests, you know, special guests for that. So that's the story on my wife singing.
Cool.
Actually, I'm trying to talk her into singing some tune with a verse on our Here in the Changes section next
That would be
Thursday.
cool. That
She's
would
been
be
studying
cool.
piano, by the way, with Ron Levy for a
Oh,
couple of years now,
oh,
and he's been kind of her learn jazz tunes and stuff.
great.
Oh, she just opened the door to my office here and she's throwing kisses to me. I guess I did good saying that.
You did say a lot of nice things.
Well, she deserves. She's a good woman. I'm lucky to have her. So anyway, let's see where we were. Where were we?
I don't know. We can move on. So, yeah, we've gotten a lot of good information from you, and been impressed with your playing. And we've learned about your mentors. What are you doing now? Obviously you're thinking about planning this recording, and you're teaching. I know you're teaching the one class. Do you teach a lot of one-offs? I mean,
Yeah, I do the jazz-based students for Cal State Fullerton and
okay,
Saddleback College, which is in Mission Viejo in Orange County.
yeah,
That program is run by my good friend and a great musician. Do you know Joey Sellers?
absolutely. I love Joey Sellers. He was on.
Joey is an amazing guy. He's like such a complete musician. He's a fine trombonist, great arranger. He used to do arrangements for the Tonight Show band.
Yeah.
For Johnny Carson, and
Yeah.
So he heads the program there. We have a nice faculty down there.
Uh-huh.
Let's see, we have Ron Stout.
I'm going to interrupt you with a funny story.
Okay, shoot.
because you'll like this. So he has that he has that duo with Ryan McGee. What is it? No, Ryan. Wait, do I have his name right? The other trombone player. He was his student, and then they have this
Oh,
duo.
Ryan, is it Ryan Dragon by any chance?
Yes, Ryan Dragon.
Whose father is Art Dragon, a really fine trombone player who had the Disneyland band for many years until he retired.
See, it's no matter where you look, you see history. But those two have the those two have the most unusual duo. It's improvisational, although they do have songs that they play, like everything from classical to jazz and or more. And then, but what's really funny is not so much Joey, but Ryan dresses up really pretty funny.
Oh, really?
So yeah, like he'll actually wear what are those little underwear things called? Like a little underwear thing
An
and
underwear thing.
a wrestling mask.
A wrestling match like the Mexican wrestlers.
And so when I
Wait a
was
minute, wait a minute, Ken. I gotta get this underwear thing. What can that be? I can't.
like Speedos or something, they're like real small, right? The real tight little small
Okay,
underwear.
Speedo. I can relate to that. Yeah, I don't think of that as quite as underwear, but I like your analogy.
To me, it's like underwear. And then when I was booking that room downtown, the Olac, the Bar Fedora, so I decided that I wanted to have them there. And first, so Joey says, "Are you sure you want us there?" Because it's really, it's pretty out. It's very outside music,
Oh
very,
yeah.
and it's just two trombones,
Yeah.
and they do things like give you balloons
Oh
and
yeah, Joey's thing with the balloons is
shout out.
hilarious.
Yeah. So I said, yeah, I want you there. So not a big crowd. But what was really funny was this couple, a really nice couple came in, and the husband wanted to introduce his wife to jazz.
Oh!
And I said to them before the music, I said, this music is not kind of your typical jazz. It's it's a little weird, it's a little out there. And they said, "Oh, that's okay." And I said, "Okay." They stayed the whole first set. They never got up and left. They were that to me was like just
It's
one of the funniest.
entertaining.
Oh God.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, he's a character. He has a great sense of humor. So let's see the staff there. I'll finish. There's got Ron Stout, one of the great jazz trumpet players in the world, as far as I'm
Yes.
concerned, and great jazz historian. He's a remarkable guy.
Yes.
Jerry Pinter is the saxophone
Oh,
guy.
one of my favorites.
Jamie Rosen is the guitar guy,
Oh,
and Paul Johnson, who's been working at Disneyland
I don't
for
think I
many,
know
many
Paul.
years. Yeah, so he's made a lot of money, probably in the millions by now at Disneyland. So if anybody needs to borrow some money, contact Paul Johnson. Great
Okay.
bunch of guys. Now let's see who else is at Cal State. And by the way, before the pandemic hit, I would go up and coach some combos, but I'm not doing it. Like I say, I'm just doing the bass students now. I
Okay.
mentioned Paul Kreibich. Bill Cunliffe is the director of jazz studies there.
Yeah.
Let's see. I hardly ever see the guys now, so I'm not sure. I think Ron Eschete is still the jazz guitar guy. Let's see who else is. I think Jeff Elwood may still be
Great
the
player.
tenor sax guy. Damon.
This is
Damon
like a
Rose.
great. This is great musicians, great players.
It's a great faculty at both those places. Eric Dries also does some class. He's a great piano player.
It's really
Just a great faculty at Cal State and at Saddleback College. I'm lucky to be associated with those guys.
Yeah, really, really, really nice. And and we haven't talked about compositions. Are you a writer?
Sometimes I'll write a letter. I wrote a Valentine's poem for Becky this year.
That's nice.
Roses are red, violets are blue. I sure do love you. Things like that. But no,
Something deep.
but not really. On our session that we do, Kath, with our Hearing the Changes session,
Yeah.
uh, we have some well-known, notable musicians. One of my first heroes, a gentleman who played bass with Bill Evans for 6 years,
Uh-huh.
Chuck Israels, who lives in the Portland area.
Oh,
And Chuck, in our last session, as you may recall, Kathy was talking about
composing.
studying composition. Even if you don't want to be a composer, it helps you learn a lot about just music and helps you become a better musician.
Yeah.
I wonder if Ron Levy's still here. He might have a comment about the importance of composition. Are you still here, Ron?
I don't know. We'll see. There's a little delay when we ask people. So
He may have left. He's a busy guy. He
yeah,
teaches privately and he's doing all sorts of stuff.
yeah.
But no, I've written a couple of things for a couple of tunes, but I can't call that composition.
Yeah.
Beethoven was a composer. Even though we used to hang out together, I can't really call myself a composer. But
He must have been a funny guy.
for Beethoven,
Yeah.
yeah, he had to be. Anybody? Can you imagine Beethoven goes into the
Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. Ron said, "Huh? What? I heard my name. What did you ask him?"
How important is studying composition to learning to be a good musician, even if you don't want to be a composer?
Okay, Ron. This is a
He'll
big
he'll
question.
he'll write something now.
He said
But I was going to say,
Beethoven is currently decomposing. That's what he said.
oh yeah, they dug up his grave and you know what he was decomposing. Yeah, God, did Ron say that?
He did.
Yeah, he steals all my material, Kathy. That's the only thing that
I know.
irritates
It
me about
sounded
that
kind
guy.
of familiar.
But yeah, I always thought, can you imagine Beethoven goes to the music publisher's office and say, I've got this idea for a new symphony. And they say, well, how does it go? And he says, okay, ta 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 ta. And they say, get out of here. Get out. Yeah, he was something else, though. Last week I used Beethoven to help one of my bass students. I said, it's a young student who's just getting into this. And I said, if you're trying to come up with a line, a melody to play, for instance, we were looking at the tune da da be da 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 Solar.
Yeah.
First chord is a C minor, 2 bars of C minor, goes to G minor 7 for 2 bars. I said, in that first bar, I said we could go da 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 da. So if we're playing that in C minor, you play G G G E flat. I said you could play that in that first measure. That would sound great. So then I said, now what would Beethoven do with that? So, well, Beethoven, he didn't just go ta 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 ta. He would what we call make it a sequence. He would play it again and starting on a different note, da 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 da, so on and so forth. And then
Yeah.
he would add notes to it. He would speed it up. He would slow it down. So I said, if you can channel Beethoven and use that concept and start with da 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 da, I said you could maybe do something da 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 da. Da 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 da. So you can add notes to it that make sense. So Beethoven actually can come in very handy when you're trying to teach jazz, I found.
Yeah. By the way, Ron said jazz improv is essentially composing in real time. Yeah, that's so true.
Well, yeah, I guess, but I hold composers in such, like Ron, in such high regard that my first thought is there's more to it than that, Ron, but it's nice of him to say that.
Well, I think it's a, being a composer myself, and a singer who's always singing the compositions, right? Um, I think it's just a different little room, of creativity, like I've been making these iMovies for singles that I've been releasing since the summer. And I found that I really like it. And it reminds me of being in the studio and producing people. There's it's like you have a feeling, and you lead the direction, and you make choices, um, regarding lots of different things, timing, um, and what it looks like and feels like. It's really nice. I'm enjoying that process a lot.
Cathy, I've wondered about this here recently. That tune you wrote for Barry Zweig for his memorial, which
Yeah.
I thought was absolutely wonderful in every way. It was lovely.
Thanks. Yeah, it was so
What
beautiful.
what is your background? Have you studied composition or piano or play the guitar or
Well, um, when my dad was a sax player, my mom had been a singer prior to marriage, and my twin sisters, who were 4 years older than me, both sang really beautifully,
hmm,
and one played piano. So as I grew up, the three of us always sang together and harmonized. My dad, my first gig was with my dad, and as I always say, my bedroom was next to the living room. So I heard my dad screaming at the students on Saturday mornings,
oh,
hey, hey, stuff like that. So, and then
was he Italian by any chance?
Jewish, close. He always
Oh,
said
I
Italian and Jewish was the
was
same
just
thing.
thinking if he was doing a hey, hey.
No, but and then I think I picked up the guitar first, and I learned a little bit, but I wasn't exactly thrilled with the classical guitar. It was like, eh.
Hmm.
Then I wanted to play violin, but my mother said I had the perfect lips for flute. So so I got the flute instead. I got this flute.
Play something for us, Cat.
Well, I can give you a note. I got a decent tone, and
Yeah,
I took my first lesson since college from Lori Bell last week.
I'll be darned.
She's a really good teacher.
Good for you.
Thank you. And I went to college. I went to Berkeley for flute arranging and composition, but I was very
Oh,
young. I didn't really. I was telling somebody Hal Crook really bored me teaching theory class because he
no kidding.
in a monotone, which apparently he was not really known for in other kind of teaching, his ensemble teaching. But and then I was you got to understand, I was like 19, and probably there were probably 20% women at Berkeley at the time, so I was a
Wow.
little distracted. But I did get a lot out of being there. I got a lot, like, just I got the camaraderie and the feeling of writing and arranging music. I got that feeling, and of course I played in bands and stuff. And I was always singing, but they didn't have voice there at the time until I
Hmm.
left. That's when they got a voice department. And so, make a long story short, I never studied composition per se. Um, and I really got into writing when I was married to my first husband, Gus. and that was much later. That was like 79. Wait, is that right? 79. Yeah. Around
Wow.
1979. And then I started writing, and I was working at the $2 bills. And so I worked there every week, and I had varying musicians, and I could try out my songs.
Yeah.
And so that's basically how I started, and went through various kind of perspectives about writing. I remember one time I was writing really simple stuff, like overly simple, folky stuff, and I thought, oh, I can't do this. I'm a jazz person. I have to write jazz. So I actually stopped writing for a year because the muse was coming through in folk music, it
Yeah,
wasn't coming
yeah.
through jazz. And then I had one conversation with a painter, and he said this one sentence, which I can't remember the sentence, but he made me realize that I had stopped the muse by limiting
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then I just started writing again. I thought, so big deal. I'll write. I don't have to sing it. I can throw it away. I can, and so I still write. I've been, writing, and then I just allow what's coming through. If I'm in a a little rocky period, I'll write rock music, or I'll write jazz stuff.
Well, Kath, I always think of Duke Ellington, who said one time, "There's only two kinds of music anyway:
Yeah,
good and bad."
yeah,
So I think people that are snobs, about one kind of music is the only way. Like, bless his heart, my dear friend Jay Canna. You miss out on a lot, Uh, you just miss out on a lot. So it's best to keep an open mind and open your ears and open your heart and
yeah,
check it all out.
yeah.
Well, yeah. I had a feeling that you had some background in
Just more
theory, harmony, and stuff.
experiential.
Yeah. Do you play piano at all?
Yeah, I play a little piano. I really wish I played better, but I'd have to get some serious time in. But I play pretty good. I play in time. I play decent sounding chords. I don't play a bass line per se, and I don't really
Thank
solo.
you, thank you, thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
keeps another bass player working.
And I do actually transpose pretty well.
Wow.
Um,
So can you open a fake book and play the changes to a tune?
yeah, the changes, yes.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's a big accomplishment. I mentioned Carmen McRae
Well,
and
she was a really good player, and Sarah, they were
Sarah,
really good players.
and let's not forget Shirley.
Oh yeah. And
Shirley,
talking about
Shirley Horn.
slow tempos.
Oh my God, yeah, yeah, yeah. But I grew to really love really slow tempos. It's like,
I love slow tempos too.
boy,
Man,
and at
all
a
that
slow tempo,
space.
every note is like being under a microscope. If you're going, you can get away with some murder. But no, not when every note is sticking right out there in your face.
I've told this story before, but one time I was listening to Shirley in my music room. Nobody was around, and I put on In the Dark. And so here's how it was going. In the dark. In the dark, right?
Oh
'Cause
my God,
she's
that's like
also
a half
great with
hour,
yeah.
between notes.
And I literally started blushing. Nobody was around. I started blushing because I started thinking of what was happening in the dark. You know,
Yeah.
that's one of the powers of space. Of course,
Wow.
I mean, space is. I always tell my students, space is not nothing. It's something. It's a choice.
Ooh, good. That's the most important part of the music.
It is. That's when everything else, you can hear everything else, right? And
Yes.
musicians, you can hear what the musicians are doing in the space. It's really beautiful. I really love space and music. Just gorgeous.
Without space, there would be no music.
Can I write that down?
Sure. Yeah, I'm thinking again about my old buddy, Ludi. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
Da, 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 da. Yeah, that's space.
Ooh, another good one. Another good space there, Kat.
Yeah, and what the timing in the space, right?
Yeah.
Like that was like there was this moment of, even though the time was moving, there was this moment of a breathing or something, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And even though we have some latency, it worked out well. Kath, I think we should start singing some duos. If only I could sing. That's the only thing standing in our way, I think, right now.
I don't know. I've heard you sing on this show today, and I'm pretty.
Is that what you called it? People ask me, Kath, over the years, people say, well, do you sing on gigs? And I always say, are you kidding? I get paid a lot of extra money not to sing once they hear me.
Not to sing.
I always say, I threaten, I'm going to sing unless you pay me extra. Okay, here, how much do you need,
By the way, Ron said that would make a good bossa, the Fifth Symphony.
Oh, okay. Here comes another memory. Oh my God, you reminded me all sorts of stuff. When I was a young man, I was in the Army band. I was stationed for a year in Huntsville, Alabama, which was a great gig. I had light duty for the band, and I was out playing gigs 5-6 nights a week. And this was like right out of. I did a year at the University of Cincinnati, got in an argument with my dad, and joined the Army band. I'd never had so much money in my life. I didn't know what to do with it. I bought a new car. It was great. Anyway, then I spent the last 2 years in Germany. And while I was in Germany, I got to thinking about, Ron, this is to you, I got to thinking about Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, and I thought, at that time, Deodato, you remember that name?
Yeah.
And I thought, man, you could go da 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 da, and I thought, oh man,
That's pretty cool, actually.
I thought I should get an ensemble and do that. I'm driving down the Autobahn in Heidelberg, Germany one day, and what do I hear on the radio? I think it was Deodato. Ta 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 ta.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I thought I remembered hearing that, actually.
I like to think that I thought of it first, but it just goes to show when you get an idea, try to act upon it immediately, because if you don't, somebody will take it and run with it. So he made some money off of that.
Elizabeth Gilbert is an author who wrote Eat, Pray, and Love. There's a movie with Julia Roberts, but there's a book, a really beautiful book. And she wrote a book called Magic, Big Magic, which basically talks about the creative process and invites everybody to get involved in the creative process. But she talked about the muse, and she said her point of view is that the muse is floating around looking for a host, and it finds you, right? And it says hello, and you think of something, and then you can either accept it and go with it, or you can say, no, I can't do that right now, or whatever. And then the muse with the same idea goes to somebody else. And she even had like a little story about, kind of in proof of it, with another writer that she had never met. She had this whole idea that was going to be published, and for personal life reasons, she had to stop it. And it turned out that this woman took this same idea, which was not a very like, oh yeah, sure, that's a good idea. It was a very subtle idea. Took it and ran with it and did it. So they had this thinking that was how the muse worked.
This whole thing about being creative, I have a couple of my students. Some of my students are just very creative, But I
Yeah.
have a couple that, like when I talk to the student about going da 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 da, enhancing that, embellishing it in some way. I said, you just have to let your brain go and see what it thinks of. It'll think of things.
Yeah.
That's being creative. But it seems like so many young people, they keep a lid on. That's not the best way to
I think it
describe
comes
it.
from technology, seriously, because the thinking in learning technology is very, you know, this kind of focus. And what you're talking about is open, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think some of that has to do with maybe they're afraid of making a mistake.
sure.
But you just have to try stuff. And then you go, oh, well, this sounds good. This works. No, that's crap. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Well,
They-
Elizabeth said this too, which I just love. It's so simple, but she said, curiosity is creativity.
yeah,
So
yeah.
isn't that a beautiful little, I mean, just be curious about something. We do that every day, you know?
There for a while, I was posting things ahead of the election on Facebook. And I would start off by saying, I tried to be thought provoking. I would start off by saying, I wonder. And then I would, so that's I think a good suggestion for young people. Just have that attitude. I wonder what would happen if I
Yeah.
went from this note to this note. I tell my students, I say, it's like when I walk my dogs, I've got them trained, and one of them's 13 and a half, the other one's around 9 or 10. When I walk my dogs, I don't walk them with a leash, which drives my poor wife crazy. But they're trained. They don't run away from me. I let them go. So I said, my dogs will go ahead of me and they'll sniff around the yard and they'll go over to this bush. I let them be free. And that's what you have to do with your mind. Pretend your mind is a dog and you're letting the dog wander on its own and see what it can find.
Yeah.
Really,
It's
really
true,
essential.
isn't it? Yeah. Hey, a few people said hi. Bill Marcus is here.
Hello,
And
Bill.
Jamie Finley.
Jamie.
He said he misses
Jamie.
you, buddy.
Oh, I miss you too. Great guitar player. Great
Yeah.
guitar player.
We did a FaceTime a few days ago. His
All
hair is getting
right.
really long. I was like, Jamie, is that you? Bradley Young, hello.
Hey, Brad. One of the great piano players.
He is. Talk about
out here.
swinging too, man.
Swinging, absolutely swinging. We've done a few gigs a couple of years ago, a tribute to Gene Harris, and Brad
Oh,
stepped right in there and channeled Gene and got that grease thing going. But Brad can also do the Bill Evans thing. Very talented guy.
he's a talented person.
Now he has a new video. Have you seen his little short movie? I forget how long it is, a minute and a half or something.
Yeah, I think I did. He a few months ago.
It's
he
a
brought
scary
that.
thing. It's like
Yeah, I did. I
it was
did.
really good.
Yeah,
Bradley posts that for everybody to see, so people can go see that. It's great. He and his girlfriend produced that, and
yeah.
Brad's the star in it, and it's really good. I couldn't sleep for weeks after that. I had nightmares.
Wow. See, Bradley, you did that really good. I always want to say Brad, but I think he's really Bradley.
He's a man of many names, Cathy. That's what he is.
Well, Luther,
He's a
it's
versatile.
it's just been just about 2 hours.
No way. No, it's only been. Come on, you pull my leg. It's only been about half an hour?
An hour and 55 minutes.
Man, time flies
Oh,
when we're having fun.
I know. Bradley said, try Valium, sir. That's funny.
Nah, I don't think so, Brad. Nah.
So, would you like to tell people anything before you sign off, or something that they should look out for with you, and or just in general, stay safe, blah blah blah.
Yes, please be safe. Wear your mask. Get your vaccination. the experts, the people that know about this stuff, say get it. It'll protect you, your loved ones, your entire community, the world. And it's the only way we're going to get business and everything going again. So listen to the experts. It's like if I have trouble with my car, I don't try to diagnose it and fix it myself. I take my car to the mechanic. If I'm not feeling well, I go to the doctors. If I have a tooth that's coming, I go to the dentist. I go to the experts. So here again, trust the expert. Don't believe stuff you read online and stuff by QAnon. By the way, QAnon, I figured out who Q is.
I can't wait.
No, are you a James Bond fan?
Yes.
Yes. Q is always in the James Bond. Q is the one that's always creating like the Aston Martin with the machine guns and all the spy devices. That's Q.
Is that why they called it QAnon?
Maybe.
I mean, they could have.
I'm saying it is, but Q could mean several things. It could stand for quack, Quacks Anonymous. It's hard to say, but don't believe these conspiracy theories. Just deal with reality. Be pragmatic. Deal with what really is.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen.
So there, and
Hughes.
also I'd like to say to everybody, in the words of Mr. Spock from Star Trek, live long and prosper. By the way, Paul Kreibich and I did about 7 episodes, including the series finale of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
What do you mean you did it?
We were on the show on 7 episodes.
Oh.
We were holographic musicians along with
you're kidding.
Along with James Darren, who played. We were.
Is this the movies or the movie or
No. This was the TV series, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where James Darren played the character Vic Fontaine. We were all of the characters, and the setting was created by a computer. It was a holographic thing.
Now I have to go watch.
Oh yeah, you got to watch for those. Paul and I had a ball on that.
I can imagine.
Paul also got me on an episode that we did of Boston Legal with the original Boston Legal, starring the original Captain Kirk.
Oh.
Oh God, just went blank on his name.
I don't remember that show really.
Boston Legal. It was a fun show.
Huh. Now, don't forget, Thursday, you also have to have Yoda and Ray Charles meet.
Oh, yes. Paul Kreibich and I, well, he doesn't know it yet, but we're going to have a conversation between Yoda saying, help you, I will. Music you want to talk about. Good.
You do that great.
Thank you, I do. So we're going to have Yoda and Ray Charles in a conversation. But that's not open to the public, unfortunately. It's just to the music students. But there you go.
I'll laugh for all of you, okay?
That'd be much appreciated. Cathy, is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap this?
Just to tell people actually who's on this week.
Yes.
So I've been doing live Monday through Wednesdays, and then I've brought back the archives Thursday through Sunday, which is really nice because it was so long ago that I started, in March, and I was doing 6 days a week. So I had a lot of people. And as a matter of fact, Luther, you are 243.
I've always thought of myself as number 243.
It's kind of a sexy number.
Thank you, Kath.
So tomorrow,
who's on?
Tomorrow, you might have worked with him, the drummer Michael Barsamanto.
I don't think so.
He has a really interesting background. Talk about playing different styles. Dave Lieb and then like rock star people. And
wow. He's
a really nice guy, great drummer, beautiful time and everything and feel.
Wonderful. And who's Wednesday?
Wednesday, Vince Mendoza.
Wow.
I'm really looking forward to speaking with him.
Wow.
For those of you who don't know Vince, he's an extraordinary arranger. You probably remember hearing Joni Mitchell's record in recent years with an orchestra, where she sings standards, and she also does both sides now in A Case of You with an orchestra, and
Yeah.
that's Vince's work.
Wow.
He's really
Does he live in L.A.?
yeah, he lives on the west side.
Wow.
And then I'm going to do archives. So, I try and put it on at 12 o'clock, but sometimes life just makes me forget. But Bob Shepard, great sax player, a pianist and arranger from Poland, a really talented person, Kuba Stankiewicz. He's really amazing.
Wow.
Then John Prue, pianist and singer.
This is all next week then.
Well, this is actually this week. This is Wednesday through Sunday,
the archives. Okay,
and
great.
Greta Matassa on Sunday. So those are the archives.
Cathy,
But,
what are you calling this show, by the way? What do you call
Noontime
this?
Hangs.
Noontime Hang.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we're doing this, I'm thinking brunch with Cathy.
Well, I always put my name first because, branding.
Yes, yes.
I do have a logo, but I can't seem to figure out how to put the logo into the Facebook PR. I could probably add it, somewhere in, or maybe I should. I don't know. That's a little too many things to do,
Somebody will know how to do it. No.
Yeah.
Somebody watching this today will be able to help you.
Maybe I'll put it at the end.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, Luther.
Cathy, thank you for having me, and thanks for joining us, everybody. I hope you enjoyed us being nonsensical for a couple of hours. It sure was fun for me.
It was fun. Thank you.
Take care now. See you next time.
Okay. Bye, Luther.
Bye, Cathy.